Hello, Dr. Francisca Anene here, and you're welcome to PPL324 Law of Thought 2. I'm sure you have enjoyed our previous lessons and you have enjoyed watching the instructional videos. And beyond enjoying, I hope that you have learned something. In fact, a lot of things. So, we're going to be learning something new again in this video. We're going to be taking another important topic in Law of Thoughts. And as usual, I'm counting on you to pay attention, to take notes if you have to take part in the activities, think about what you will hear, and try and learn whatever lessons are available to be learned. Okay, so let's go. This is our third lesson in PPL 324 Law of Thoughts 2. In this lesson, we'll be learning about vicarious liability. What we hope that you will be able to know or that you would have learned by the end of this lesson will be the definition of keywords such as vicarious, master, servant, and so on. We'll be able to discuss the concept of vicarious liability and how it applies for master-servant relationship, master and independent contractors, and master and casual agents. And then you will be able to distinguish between a servant, an independent contractor, and a casual agent. So to our definitions, what is vicarious liability? Vicarious liability is the liability of someone, a master usually, someone in superior state, for the conduct of a subordinate, a servant, because of the existence of a particular relationship between the two people. So usually employment and so on. And then a master is someone who has full or partial authority and control over another person's service. It could be the manner of doing the service or when it is done and all that. And the master is also called the employer. It can be the principal, but not all principals are masters. And usually it is the master that pays the wages or remuneration or any other form of honorarium. So a servant is the person who works under the control and supervision, direct control and supervision of the master for wages. Wages can be in cash or kind. Please note that we highlighted some words. Those are the words you must bear in mind when you're defining this point. Now, a servant is usually bound by what we call a contract of service. Note why we highlighted that off, we will see when we are looking at an independent contractor. And is not usually, there are limits to exercise of discretion, and he follows the master's control as to what and how to do his work. And of course, he earns wages. Now for an independent contractor is also engaged by the master or employer to do certain work. However, the limits of control are very, would I say, very wide, right? There are no significant limits. So he has the right to exercise his discretion as to when and how and what to do in order to perform the work he was engaged to pay. And he is bound by the terms of a contract for service. Differentiate between a contract of service for a servant and a contract for service for an independent contractor. And of course, payment is usually in lump sum, not periodic wages like for an employee. And then there's a test to determine whether someone is a servant or an independent contractor, and the test is called the control test. The test was came up, in the case of Performing Rights Society and Mitchell and Booker Limited. Now, the court advised that if you want to know whether someone is a servant or an independent control, first and most significantly, look at the nature of control and the degree of control wielded by the master. And then you can look at the nature of task is given, whether there's freedom to act, discretion, what is the contract amount, how is the contract amount paid, and can it be withheld, what are the rules on, discipline and dismissal and all of that. That will help you to determine. And then another class is a casual agent. Now, a casual agent is neither a servant nor an independent contractor. It's somebody who is acting wholly or partially for the master or principal's purpose or interest. Please note that we still refer to master or principal for want of a better word, right? He's not necessarily the master of the casual agent as you would have it in, servant or independent contractor, because there's no employment. And another point is that the relationship does not usually entail remuneration. So family, friends, domestics, and other third parties who fit into this description will be casual agents. Now let's take our first activity. I need you, based on all that we have said, to think about it. How would you differentiate between an independent contractor and a casual agent? So let's take some time and think about it. So moving on, the general rule for vicarious liability is that a master is liable for the tort of his servant, which was committed in the course of employment. Again, note that I highlighted some words: master-servant relationship, committed in the course of employment, a particular purpose, again, relationship, liability, master is liable, vicarious liability. But the general rule also is that the master is not liable for torts committed by an independent contractor. There are exceptions to this rule, whether for the servant or for the independent contractor, and we will explore them. Work that the servant has been employed to do. If it is such that liability will be strict, of course, the servant will be liable. So if you, in the case of now, Pan African gas, that was the point. A servant who was offloading gas was not supposed to be smoking, but someone else was smoking, and in the presence of the servant, another, distributor of gas, and then there was a fire, and the court held that even though the servant was negligent and his boss would not have said don't smoke, the point remains that he was working in line with the authority of his master, and it was committed in the course of the performance of his job as an. If the prohibition limits the manner of how the employee carries out his job, then the master will be liable. However, if the prohibition limits the scope of employment, differentiate. First is limiting manner, second is limiting scope. So do your job, but do it in this particular way. Doesn't matter, master will be liable. Do your job this way, do this job, master will not be liable if the servant goes outside what he was told to do. And that was what happened in Jamakani and Abeke, where there were strict rules as to carrying of, third party on company vehicles, and then the court held that the master was not. Now let's talk about liability for independent contractors. Remember what we said, there's generally no liability because the independent contractor, as his name implies, is independent and is not under the control of the master, and then he exercises his duties or performs his duties at his own discretion, right? So there are exceptions to this rule. If somebody engages the service of an independent contractor to commit an illegality, then he will be liable. So for instance, where you ask somebody to assault another person, you will be liable. And then of course we talked about strict liability in our second lesson, so you know that for where it is a strict liability offense, the master will be liable, right? In Omrod and Crossview Motor Services, the master was liable because the driver was asked to drive to pick him up on a cross-country drive and all that in a holiday, and he would have benefited because he would have enjoyed the holiday. However, in Hewitt and Bonvin, the father was not liable when he gave his car to his son to go and drop his girlfriend, because there was no benefit for him in his son using his car to go and drop the girlfriend. And of course, you know that there's the presumption that if a vehicle is driven negligent, right, as long as you can prove ownership, then it will be taken that either the owner or his servant, you know, drove the vehicle, and then there will be liability. Okay, now to our second activity. I want you to think about a lot of the things we have said, right, and answer this question. Why would a master or principal be liable for the tortious conduct of his or her casual agent? So let's take some time and think about it, and then we will end the class. Okay, so we have learned a lot in this lesson. We have learned about the meaning of vicarious liability, who master, servant, independent contractor, and agent are, um, rules and exceptions to rules on vicarious liability of masters for their servants, independent contractors, or casual agents. Again, as I always say, you can download the video and watch it again and again. But question, please feel free, post it on the discussion forum, and we can discuss it and hopefully get you on the right track. Okay, so until we meet again in our next class, or until the next video is available, I want to thank you for taking part and watching this video, and I'll see you at our next class.